Okay, y'all, buckle up, because Cardi B just walked herself into the biggest trap of her entire career, and she did it live, on camera, in front of 100 million people. Cardi B told the whole internet there is no evidence. Not weak evidence. Not shaky evidence. Cardi B stood on the words, "Where is the evidence?" There is no evidence. And within 72 hours, the man she just called a liar walked out with a folder, y'all, 17 pages of federal court paperwork, 100 pages of text messages, a lawsuit against the Diggs family that quietly settled last week, and a federal judge in Maryland now legally asking Stefon Diggs questions Cardi B does not want the answers to. And the sickest part, the part that has the whole internet losing it, is that Christopher Blake Griffith did not scream. He did not clap back. This man opened his response by telling Cardi B, sweetly, that he respects her too much to disrespect her. And then, one paragraph later, he buried her. I read every single page of the court file so you don't have to, and by the end of this video, I promise, you will not look at Cardi B the same, and you might not look at Stefon Diggs the same either. Make sure y'all are subscribed, because there is a jury trial being scheduled as I am recording this, and the next 21 days are going to be absolute chaos. Okay, so let me catch y'all all the way up. Cardi B, as most of y'all know, had a baby boy back in November with Stefon Diggs. That baby is not even a year old. Cardi B and Stefon Diggs are, in Cardi B's own words, currently beefing, currently on and off, currently not on great terms. Cardi B literally said, out loud, on a public space, and I am quoting her, "Y'all got me defending a man that I'm beefing with." Let that sit for a second. She is beefing with the father of her son, and she is still out here in the trenches, in comment sections, on Spaces, on Twitter, fighting for him against a man she has never even met. Now, in fairness to Cardi B, I get it. If somebody is out here calling your baby daddy gay in front of the entire planet, you are not thinking about lawyers, you are thinking about your baby, you are thinking about your family. That's human. But, y'all, there is a difference between defending your baby daddy in private, and going public to call another man a liar and a thief, when that man is sitting on a folder full of federal paperwork with your baby daddy's name on every page. That is the difference Cardi B did not respect. And now, Cardi B is about to learn the hardest lesson she has ever learned in public. Now, for anybody living under a rock, here is the man in the middle of all of this. His name is Christopher Blake Griffith. Chris and Stefon Diggs used to move in the same circle. Same rooms, same parties, same private group chats, and, according to the court file, over 100 pages of text messages between the two of them, a number Stefon Diggs and his lawyers have not denied one single time. Chris publicly accuses Stefon Diggs of making a sexual pass at him at a private party at Stefon's Maryland home. Chris says when he told Stefon no, things got ugly, fast. Chris says he was jumped, twice, in 2 different cities, on 2 different nights, on camera. Chris says Stefon Diggs' own brother, Darrell Diggs, was charged and convicted in connection to one of those attacks. On a normal day, this is just another he said mess that fades in 72 hours. But it is not a normal day, because Stefon Diggs is dating Cardi B, or was, on and off, and they have a baby boy at home. And when the internet started running with the story, Cardi B could not sit still. Cardi B logged on. Cardi B hopped on Spaces. Cardi B went to war, publicly, on the record, for Stefon Diggs. And even Cardi B, at the very beginning, admits, out loud, that she knows how this looks. The exact words Cardi B used, quoting her verbatim, were, "I really hate how y'all got me defending a man I'm beefing with." Let that hit you again. Cardi B is saying, in her own mouth, that she is beefing with this man and still standing on the line for him. And then Cardi B doubled down. Cardi B said, exact wording, "I'm not going to let nobody be putting my allegations on my baby daddy, because at the end of the day, whether I am or not, y'all are going to throw that in my face, and it's not true." Y'all catch what Cardi B just did there? Cardi B just admitted, in front of 100 million followers, that this is not really about Stefon Diggs. This is about Cardi B. This is about Cardi B's image. This is about the ghost of the whole Offset situation. Cardi B did not want to answer questions about her own life, so Cardi B decided to answer questions about somebody else's life. And Cardi B picked the wrong somebody, on the wrong week, in front of the wrong man with the wrong folder. Because here is where Cardi B slipped. Somebody in that space asked Cardi B, "No chaser, are we supposed to believe you, or are we supposed to believe the evidence?" And Cardi B, without blinking, answered, word for word, "Where is the evidence?" There is no evidence. There's evidence of Chris stealing from Stefon, and no evidence of Chris's claims. Not one receipt. No evidence. Memorize those words, because everything I am about to walk y'all through is a surgical, line-by-line response to that exact quote. Christopher Blake Griffith saw Cardi B tell over 100 million followers that he is a liar and a fraud with no proof. And instead of going crazy, Chris wrote what has to be the calmest, coldest, most professionally shady reply of the year. Chris opened by saying, quoting him, "I have too much respect for Bartier and the women in general for me to say anything disparaging back to her." Translate that. Chris did not come at Cardi B. Chris came at what Cardi B said. Chris kept his tone soft, his voice level, his energy respectful, and that is what made the next line hit like a truck. Because right after that respectful opener, Chris looked Cardi B dead in the eye through the screen and told her, quote, "But mama, please take off the blinders. My time around that collective predates you." Y'all read that back. My time around that collective predates you. Translation, in plain English, I knew Stefon Diggs before you walked into the picture. You met this man last season. I have years of history with him. I have 100 pages of messages with him. And you are out here defending a version of Stefon Diggs you have never actually met. And a lot of y'all have been saying the exact same thing in the comments for weeks. Cardi B is defending a highlight reel. Chris is talking about the raw footage. But Cardi B did not stop there. Cardi B went further. Cardi B said, quote, "This man did 3 interviews, changed his story 2 times, and never provided not one receipt." You're right. Wait till the trials start. So Cardi B is telling the internet that Chris has no receipts, no paperwork, nothing but a shifting story. But here is what Cardi B either does not know, or, worse, does know and chose to ignore. This is not a social media story anymore. This has been a federal court case since October, styled Stefon Diggs versus Christopher Blake Griffith, sitting in front of a federal judge in Maryland. I pulled the actual 17-page complaint. I read every line. And what is in that document is so much more insane than anything on TikTok or Twitter. So let me walk y'all through it, in order, because the order is what makes this whole thing scarier for both Cardi B and Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs is the one who filed the lawsuit. Stefon Diggs is suing Chris on 5 counts, 2 counts of defamation, 1 count of intentional infliction of emotional distress, and 2 counts related to interference with Stefon Diggs' endorsement contracts. Stefon Diggs' lawyers put in the filing, in black and white, that his contracts have morality clauses, and they point at the UGG campaign. Because what Chris did, which is honestly wild, is that Chris tagged UGG directly under Stefon Diggs' own advertisement, and wrote a caption I am about to read word for word. Chris wrote that Stefon Diggs, quote, drugged him, attempted to assault him, and conspired with his employee, hitman to organize an attack on his life, that Stefon Diggs' brother Darrell Diggs was charged and convicted for being involved in, and that UGG gave him a campaign spot standing next to Sarah Jessica Parker. Chris ended it with, quote, somebody's got to do their homework. I'm disgusted. And, y'all, Chris compared Stefon Diggs to Aaron Hernandez, on Stefon Diggs' own endorsement post. This did not start with a whisper. This started with a public detonation. Now, this is where Stefon Diggs' version of that night comes in, because Stefon Diggs' own lawyers wrote this version in the filing themselves. On May 20th of 2023, Stefon Diggs Foundation threw a charity basketball game in D.C. 600 people in the room. $30,000 raised for single mothers, a detail I want y'all to sit with. Stefon Diggs personally invited Chris to the event. Stefon Diggs' own words, in a federal document, admit that Stefon Diggs and Chris were, quote, cool, and that Stefon Diggs invited Chris specifically to build buzz for the foundation. After the game, a group went back to Stefon Diggs' home in Rockville, Maryland. Stefon Diggs was not there yet. Stefon Diggs' assistant walks into Stefon Diggs' bedroom and, according to the filing, finds Chris alone in there, quote, prying around. Chris allegedly tells the assistant that Stefon Diggs promised him a tour of the house. The assistant does not buy it and sends Chris back downstairs. Later that same night, the assistant sees Chris coming up from the basement carrying a suitcase, appearing to have collected Stefon Diggs' personal belongings. The staff puts Chris in a rideshare and sends him to the airport. So, in Stefon Diggs' version, the only person who committed a crime that night was Chris. And, y'all, this is exactly what Cardi B was talking about. When Cardi B said, there's evidence of Chris stealing from Stefon, this is the story she is talking about. It is in the filing. But, y'all, this is where the whole thing turns, because Chris's version of the same night is also in that document, pulled directly from the police report Chris filed with Montgomery County Police, a report the detective flagged as recorded on audio. Stefon Diggs' lawyers put Chris's own version in front of the federal judge and labeled every line of it false. Now, let me read what Chris told police, because Cardi B needs to hear this, and every jury member on this trial is absolutely going to hear this. Chris told police that Stefon Diggs offered him, quote, all sorts of candy throughout the night, that Chris did not know was laced with drugs. Chris told police the candy made his pupils so large he could not see the color of his own eyes, made his skin tingle, and made it hard to form sentences. Chris told police he suspected the candy was, quote, ecstasy-infused. Chris told police that later that night, Stefon Diggs drove him back to the house in Stefon Diggs' two-seater Porsche, just the two of them in the car. Chris told police that Stefon Diggs put his arm around him, quote, like a brother would, then gripped his shoulder, pulled him in close, and, this is a quote from a federal filing, put his tongue in his ear in a kissing fashion, while whispering to Chris to come to his room. Chris told police he ran down a hallway, locked himself in a bathroom, and spent 45 minutes splashing water on his face, trying to, quote, plan my escape from his enormous property. Now, before y'all lose it, remember, this is Chris's version, and Stefon Diggs and his lawyers have called every word of this fiction. But I promised y'all I would read the paperwork, so I am reading the paperwork. Chris told police that when he finally came out of the bathroom, two women and a man cornered him in a hallway and demanded he corroborate a story. Chris says they asked him, quote, so what are you going to say when you leave here? Chris told police he was then stripped, beaten, and robbed of his silver titanium Rimowa trunk and his jewelry, $30,000 to $50,000 of belongings, and put in a car to the airport in, quote, the worst clothes you could imagine. 1 week later, May 29th, in Los Angeles, the second alleged attack happened. In the same filing, Chris describes what he calls, quote, the hit Stefon Diggs sent out on my life, which was downgraded to an armed aggravated robbery since they couldn't pull it off. A hit, downgraded to a robbery, because, in Chris's words, they couldn't pull it off. And it does not stop there. In the same post Stefon Diggs is suing Chris over, Chris claims Stefon Diggs is, quote, operating a sex ring out of his residence. Chris claims Stefon Diggs, quote, has a history of drugging people at his private parties. And, y'all, on page 8 of the filing, I promise I am not making this up, Chris claimed that Stefon Diggs' assistant plays a, quote, very Ghislaine Maxwell-esque role and, quote, practices witchcraft on the sexual subjects to prepare them for Stefon. Witchcraft. Y'all, we went from a charity basketball game for single mothers, to a house party, to witchcraft, in 8 pages. This is the material Stefon Diggs' lawyers are calling fiction. And, honestly, once you read that section out loud, you understand why they filed the lawsuit. Because if any of that is even slightly untrue, that is defamation with a capital D. Now, here is what is bad for Chris, if you are being fair. The timeline. Stefon Diggs' filing points out that Chris did not go to the police until October 16 of 2024. That is 17 months after the night at the house. 17 months. And when Chris finally did file that report, Montgomery County Police took no action. No charges. Nothing. That is in the document. And on the Los Angeles incident, Stefon Diggs' filing says Stefon Diggs was not there. Stefon Diggs was not even in the state of California. Even Chris himself does not claim Stefon Diggs personally touched him that day. Chris claims Stefon Diggs sent people. And a claim like that is a claim you have to prove, and so far, on paper, nobody has proven it. So if you are Cardi B, and you say there is no criminal evidence, on that narrow reading, Cardi B is technically right. That is what Cardi B is standing on. But here is what is bad for Stefon Diggs, and this is the part Cardi B did not read before she went live. Stefon Diggs' own filing kills what would have been his cleanest defense. Stefon Diggs cannot say Chris is a random stranger making things up, because Stefon Diggs is the one who personally invited Chris. It was a party at Stefon Diggs' own home. Stefon Diggs' own lawyers admit in writing that they were acquaintances. And Stefon Diggs' own brother's $10 million lawsuit, connected to the LA attack, did not get laughed out of court. That case quietly settled last week. The terms are confidential. Y'all, a case does not settle for confidential terms if there is nothing there. That is not how a courtroom works. And it gets worse for Stefon Diggs. There is a countersuit on his desk right now. Sexual battery. Civil conspiracy. Chris is claiming, in a separate case, that Stefon Diggs conspired with his brother and 2 other men on that May 29 attack in Los Angeles. Because of that conspiracy claim, Stefon Diggs just got dragged into the Los Angeles case as a cross-defendant. Which means, right now, in real time, Stefon Diggs is defending the same night, in 2 different courtrooms, on 2 sides of the country, in front of 2 different judges. Stefon Diggs' lawyers are begging the Maryland judge to pause the case. Their exact words are, quote, blatant gamesmanship. And Cardi B, on Space, is telling the world there is no evidence. Now, remember, Cardi B said Chris has no receipts. Chris said, on record, that there are over 100 pages of text messages between Chris and Stefon Diggs. And Stefon Diggs' legal response was not, those are fake. Stefon Diggs' response, through his own team, was, essentially, post them then. Which is either the most confident move I have ever seen, or the most reckless, and there is no in-between. Because if those 100 pages come out, and they show what Chris says they show, this whole thing is over in a weekend. And then there is the June 3rd order, which nobody is talking about enough. The federal judge in this case issued an 8-page ruling. I read it. And it is brutal for Stefon Diggs. When Chris's lawyers asked Stefon Diggs, in a formal legal question, how Stefon Diggs knows Chris, Stefon Diggs answered with basically one word. Acquaintances. And the judge did not like that. The judge then ordered Stefon Diggs to hand over information, and, y'all, listen to this list, because this is what a federal judge is now legally requiring Stefon Diggs to disclose. Any payments made to the alleged assailants of the May 29 attack, between May and November of 2023. Every sexual misconduct allegation ever made against Stefon Diggs by anyone since 2020, whether formal charges were filed or not. And the names of every PR and reputation management professional Stefon Diggs has worked with. And, this is the part Cardi B needs to sit with, if Stefon Diggs does not comply, the order literally lists a default judgment as the consequence, which, in plain English, is an automatic legal loss on the entire case. Now, to be fair to Stefon Diggs, the same order cut in his direction on a few points. The judge refused to force Stefon Diggs to answer the drug question directly and specifically called out Chris's team for not compromising in good faith. But when a federal judge is asking who got paid after an attack, this is not a blog story anymore. And that, right there, is Cardi B's problem. Because when Cardi B told the world there is no evidence, if Cardi B meant no criminal charges, then, technically, Cardi B is correct, and the filing backs her up. There are no charges. The police report was filed 17 months late. But no evidence and no charges are two completely different things, and Cardi B, of all people, should know that. A settled $10 million lawsuit is evidence of something. A countersuit is evidence of something. A federal judge asking financial questions is evidence of something. 100 pages of text messages nobody has seen is evidence of something. And, y'all, Cardi B has been in a courtroom before. Cardi B won her case against Tasha K because Cardi B walked in holding medical records. The paperwork saved Cardi B. This time, Cardi B picked her side before the paperwork even hit the table. That is the gamble Cardi B just made, publicly, on behalf of a man she is publicly beefing with, while raising a baby that is not even a year old with him. Now, here is why the timing matters. This whole thing is coming to a head in the next 21 days. Discovery in the Maryland case officially closed on July 2nd. The depositions are done. Both Stefon Diggs and Chris have already answered questions, under oath, on the record. 2 days ago, on July 14th, Stefon Diggs filed a motion for partial summary judgment, with actual deposition transcripts attached, asking the judge to kill part of Chris's case before it ever reaches a jury. The judge wants a status report from both sides by July 20th, and the judge is already asking both sides if they want to sit down for formal settlement talks. And, y'all, if this does not settle, Stefon Diggs demanded a jury trial. It is on the last page of the filing. 12 regular people from Maryland, hearing all of this out loud. The candy. The suitcase. The Porsche. The tongue in the ear. The witchcraft. The 100 pages of text messages. And Cardi B's name floating over the whole courtroom, with the entire NFL and half of Instagram watching. And that is just Maryland. The Los Angeles case is already headed for its own trial in January. So, at this point, y'all, there are only two possibilities, and there is no third one. Possibility 1, Christopher Blake Griffith submitted the wildest piece of fiction Montgomery County Police has ever received, and Stefon Diggs is an innocent man being dragged by a former acquaintance with a laptop. Possibility 2, Stefon Diggs has been living a double life for years, and Stefon Diggs just filed a lawsuit against the one man who actually has the paperwork to prove it. There is no middle ground. And Cardi B, on Space, in front of 100 million followers, planted her flag on Possibility 1 before the Discovery folder was even opened. That is a real gamble. And I want to be clear, I am not telling Cardi B what to do. Cardi B is a grown woman, Cardi B is a superstar, Cardi B is a mother, and Cardi B is allowed to fight for the father of her child. That is her right. But there is defending a man in private, and there is calling another man a liar in public. Cardi B chose the second option. And now, Cardi B is on the record too. And here is the part that gave me chills reading the filing. Chris says he has receipts. Chris says he has photos. Chris says he can identify, quote, one pieces of jewelry that Chris claims were his, that Stefon Diggs has been photographed wearing at Paris Fashion Week, at Monday Night Football, at Thursday Night Football, in campaigns. Chris says he can walk into that courtroom and match those pieces, on camera, to purchase records. That is not a claim you make on a space. That is a claim you make when you already know what your lawyer is going to hand the jury. And if Chris walks in with even half of what he says he has, Cardi B's, there is no evidence, clip is going to be the #1 exhibit against the wrong side of this case. So, y'all, I want to be honest with you. I do not know what to think anymore. I read the filing, I read the order, I read the countersuit, and I still have questions. That is why I need y'all in the comments section on this one, because this is about to explode in the next 2 weeks. Are you Team Cardi B, standing on the fact that no charges have been filed and there is a real chance Chris is exaggerating a bad night into a movie? Or are you Team Chris, standing on the settled $10 million lawsuit, the countersuit, the 100 pages of text messages, and the federal judge asking Stefon Diggs where his money went. Did the court documents change your mind? Drop it in the comments, be real with me, because I read every single one, and I am pulling the best ones into the next video. And, y'all, one more thing before I let you go. There is something Cardi B said in that same space that has been sitting on my chest. Cardi B said, exact wording, whether I am or not, they're going to throw that in my face. Y'all, catch that. That is not somebody defending a lie. That is somebody defending an image. And the second paperwork lands, an image cannot save you. Only the paperwork can. Cardi B knows this. Cardi B lived this in the Tasha K case. That is what makes this one so wild to me. So make sure y'all are subscribed, because when that July 20th status report drops, I am covering it live, on this channel, first. When those 100 pages of text messages leak, and, y'all, they are going to leak, I am covering it here first. When that jury trial gets scheduled, I am reading the whole verdict page by page, right here, with y'all. Cardi B, Stefon Diggs, if any of this is off, please do not sue me, this is all publicly filed information from the federal court file, y'all know how I get down. That said, this is the story of the year, and it is about to get worse before it gets better. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments below. That's all I have for you, and I'll talk to you later.